Thank you. Does the DoD know for a fact that Prigozhin is still alive, or are we in a weekend at Bernie's scenario right now?
I'm sorry, Jeff, I don't get the reference. I'm kidding. Gen Xer here at the podium. Okay. Again, Jeff, like we're watching the press reports out there, so I'm not gonna be able to provide a status update. I have many responsibilities, but press secretary for Mr. Prigozhin is not one, so I really can't comment on his current status. Thank you. Let me go to Tony here.
A few equipment questions. How soon might the Bradleys and Strykers arrive in Ukraine?
Tony, I'm not going to give a specific timeline other than to say we will move equipment there as quickly as possible, and I think our track record shows that we've been able to move things quickly. So we will never announce in advance when specifically those things will arrive. They will appear on the battlefield quickly.
Status on the M1A1 for refurbishments. Can you give us a sense of how many of the 31 have been refurbished to date? And is there a possibility they may arrive sooner than September?
I cannot give a status update on individual tanks at this time, other than to say that, again, we're committed to getting them there before the end of the year. I think we've talked about in the fall timeframe to deliver those tanks. In the meantime, training does continue at Grafenwehr, and so again, we'll keep you posted. One thing we will not do, kind of to my earlier comments, we will not announce, hey, the tanks are going to be delivered on this date at this time, as you know. But we understand there's a lot of interest in that, and so we'll keep you posted.
There's no acceleration. You don't see them coming.
This is already an acceleration, right? I mean, originally when we had announced the M1A2 variant, we were looking at a longer timeline. So by going this route with the M1A1, refurbishing them, putting them into a variant that will meet Ukraine's battlefield needs, this was already an acceleration of the process. And then by doing the training concurrently with some training tanks, the idea is that when those tanks are refurbished, when the training is complete, the maintainers are trained, we can marry them up and get them into Ukraine sooner rather than later.
One more equipment question. What's the status of the PDA for Taiwan that the Secretary alluded to like a month ago that you were still working on? And
yeah.
Where's it headed?
Yeah, so I don't have an update to provide at this time in terms of the timing. Again, as you highlighted, the Secretary did indicate that that's something that we are working towards, but I'm not going to put a timeline on today.
Or is it still in the discussion phase?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate from the podium here. We'll keep you posted. Thank you very much. Let me go back here to Ro.
Yeah, thank you very much. One question from Taiwan. Last week, the U.S. National Security cut the transit in the Taiwan Strait a day after Secretary Blinken's visit to Beijing. I wonder why the U.S. deployed a U.S. Coast Guard ship instead of destroyer or cruiser at this time.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ro. So first of all, over the years, we've deployed a variety of capabilities through the Strait and throughout the Indo-Pacific to demonstrate the capabilities that we have. The most important aspect of any vessel is the fact that it's carrying the American flag. Okay, so I don't know that I would read into the particular type of platform. And as the son of a proud coastie, I think that the U.S. Coast Guard is a fantastic service, and that their vessels are just as powerful and also signal U.S. commitment in the region as well as any other vessel that we sail. So, yes, ma'am.
So earlier this month, the U.S. was concerned that North Korea was planning to deliver more artillery equipment to Russia. Have you seen the DPRK trying to move weapons to Russia since all of this happened?
Yeah, I don't have anything new to provide on that front beyond what we provided previously.
So you haven't seen any talks, no movement between the two companies?
I don't have anything new to provide. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much, General. According to the Japanese government, U.S. and Japan hold extended deterrence dialogue (EDD) from yesterday to today in the U.S. And separately, U.S. and ROK have established new nuclear consultative group under the Washington Declaration. And my question is, what do you think of the possibility of creating a new trilateral mechanism among U.S., ROK, and Japan on extended deterrence specifically?
Sure. At the risk of not making policy here from the podium, clearly we very much value the relationship that we have with Japan and with the Republic of Korea, and certainly continue to work very closely with those allies to find opportunities for our nations to work together. And so when and if we have anything new to announce, we certainly will. But one thing I'm positive of is that we will continue to work very closely together, both in the region and elsewhere, to ensure that we can preserve a free and open Indo-Pacific, and that we can work together to ensure peace and stability around the world. Thank you. Let me go here to...
Thank you, General. I want to go back to the situation in Russia, and noting that you referred to it as an internal affair. However, the Pentagon has to deal with the situation and make assessments and maybe prepare some scenarios. This is what the President said. In dealing with this internal affair, how are you describing it? Is it a mutiny? Is it a rebellion? Is it a coup d'etat? When you look at it, what is this?
Yeah, thanks, Fadi. I'll leave it to you to come up with what characterization you want to. Obviously, we monitored the events there, but as far as the internal security situation within Russia, again, that's an internal matter. I'm not going to put a particular stamp on it.
I appreciate that, but I'm sure that you have to deal with potential outcomes. And in trying to assess what outcomes might happen or come out of this, you have to have a certain framework.
Absolutely, and I think, and again, I appreciate the question, and I understand where you would like me to go on this, but I think the facts were there for all of us to see, and I think this is an issue that Russia obviously needs to address internally. But in terms of whether you want me to call this a coup, an armed insurrection, or I'm just, yeah.
And lastly, Russian President Putin basically alluded at the West's role maybe in this internal affair event by saying that the West wants the Russians to kill each other in this mutiny. Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was pretty clear at the top that we were not involved in this. We won't get involved in this. We've been very clear from the beginning that we are not at war with Russia. We don't seek conflict with Russia. Our focus is on supporting Ukraine and enabling them to defend themselves. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Thank you, General. My question is about child soldiers. The United Nations just released its report about children and armed conflict, which shows violations against children. So, according to this report, a total of 1,696 children were verified as recruited and used by Syrian Democratic Forces and YPG and other components of SDF. And the reports also say that the YPG, which is the Syrian branch of the PKK, killed and abducted children. Just to remind, the YPG is the Syrian branch of PKK, and PKK is a terrorist organization. Is not only.
Are you asking a question, or are you making a declarative statement?
I will ask a question.
Okay.
And the PKK is, a terrorist
I know
organization.
what the PKK is, yeah. I'm very aware. The United States has declared the PKK a terrorist organization. Very aware of that. Can you get to your question?
Yeah. And the UN Secretary General Guterres made a statement that he is deeply concerned by the increase in verified cases of child recruitment and use by SDF, and I urge SDF to immediately end all violations. So my question is, given that SDF is the US partners on the ground in Syria, are you planning to hold the SDF leadership accountable for crimes against humanity, and are you planning to sanction the SDF or maybe stop partnership with them because it is verified?
Yeah, I got your question. So this is a press briefing room where we ask questions. We don't come here and provide editorial comments for 10, 15 minutes. So to your question, I haven't seen the report, so I can't comment on it. What I will tell you is that the SDF have been very reliable partners. And if you want to go back in time a little bit to 2014, when ISIS was beheading people and controlled half of Baghdad and most of Syria, and talk about human rights violations, we can go ahead and talk about that. But in the meantime, haven't seen the report, so can't comment on it. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
So Wagner now might have some kind of presence in Belarus, in Minsk, less than 200 miles from where the next NATO summit will take place in Vilnius, Lithuania. Is that any kind of security concern, additional security concern at all?
Obviously the situation in Ukraine has presented a significant security concern from the beginning in terms of the kinds of activities that the international community is trying to prevent here, right? The fact that Russia was able to invade its peaceful democratic neighbor unprovoked creates a significant security concern throughout Europe and internationally. And so this is why you've seen the world come together to try to deter any further aggression beyond the Russian borders, and why it's so important that we support Ukraine. As it pertains to Belarus, clearly we know that Belarus and Russia maintain a relationship. We've seen no indication at this point of any type of additional military activity that prevents that threat or presents a threat. But what I would say is, the NATO alliance is a very strong alliance that's worked very hard over the last year to ensure our collective security and ensure a commitment to one another that every single square inch of NATO territory will be protected. Thank you. Time for a couple more. Yes, sir, and then we'll go to Louis.
Thank you very much, General. General, regarding to what's happened this weekend in Russia, do you still have communications with your counterpart in Russia about this situation? And what was your message to them? And what's the big concerns for the DoD about what's happened during that weekend?
Yeah, so to answer your question, no, the Secretary did not talk to his Russian counterpart. And in terms of, that's the answer to your question. So did you have a second part to that?
I know, do you still, you don't have any communications with Russia till even the lower level?
Well, broadly, yeah. We have multiple lines of communication with Russia, various mechanisms by which to communicate. But as it relates to the Secretary, no, he did not communicate with his counterpart over the weekend.
Big concerns about what's happened during the weekend. Thank you.
Well, certainly. In terms of potential instability in Russia, it's something that we take seriously, which is why the Secretary and other senior U.S. government leaders were watching and continue to watch this situation closely, and we will going forward. Let me go to Louis, and then we'll do one more on the phone here.
General, following up on Natasha's question about the F-16s, you mentioned the review that's at the State Department for Denmark. What are the next steps after that? Should that be approved? And does the Netherlands have to undertake the same approval? And in other words, can one country begin training on the F-16s before the other? But what essentially happens should approval happen? In terms of, are you looking at contractors being the trainers?
Did I say Netherlands or did I say Denmark?
Okay. But the Netherlands is also...
Correct. So exactly. So the Netherlands and Denmark have volunteered to take the lead when it comes to putting together this program. And so they're going through that process right now of identifying and putting those kinds of details together in terms of what that training pipeline will look like. So in terms of considerations like basic flying training, language training, since English will be a requirement to fly the F-16, and then where that training will actually occur. And so those are all details that the Danes and the Dutch are working through right now. In terms of the third-party transfer request, again, I'm not going to put the cart before the horse here and speculate in terms of timing, but you've heard the U.S. say that we are committed to supporting this program. And so we'll continue to work with Denmark and the Netherlands and other partners who have agreed, allies who have agreed to support this program to ensure that it's successful. And we'll certainly keep you updated as more information becomes available. Okay, let me go, last question, Jeff Selden on the line.
General, thanks very much for doing this. Wanted to follow up a little bit on Wagner and Africa. To what extent is the Pentagon concerned about, or maybe even starting to see a possible domino effect with a weakened Wagner group leading to additional instability in the places it's inserted itself in Africa? And then also, while events were unfolding with Wagner, Prigozhin, and the aborted run on Moscow, were there any attempts by the Pentagon to contact China's military? And if so, was there any response?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So you may not have heard my comments earlier about Africa, but the bottom line is, in terms of the potential implications for Wagner Group in Africa, that's something that we'll continue to keep an eye on. We've said for a while that they are a destabilizing influence in that region and certainly a threat, which is why they've been declared a transnational criminal organization, and the United States government has imposed sanctions on actors who are facilitating or also a part of the Wagner Group. In terms of China, again, I don't have anything new to announce in terms of outreach to China. Certainly, we continue to advocate for keeping the lines of communication open, and we'll actively continue to do that. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.